People's Assembly asserts its full support of the political program to solve the crisis on the basis of Syria's sovereignty and the will of its people. Units of the Syrian Arab Army destroyed terrorist hideouts and kill or wound several of them. The Minister of Education examinations are going ahead well and the development of curricula continues. The Minister of Electricity visits a number of emergency centres to review their readiness. Good afternoon, welcome to our news bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halaqi issued a decision to form a committee under his leadership and the membership of Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs, Ministers of Transportation, Information, Industry and Justice, and the State Ministers for National Reconciliation, the Arab Red Crescent and the People's Assembly to implement the duty of the current government concerning the political programme to solve the crisis and make intensive communication with the national opposition parties and political forces, as well as civil societies, bodies including the social, religious and economic bodies, in preparation to start an open dialogue before the Comprehensive National Dialogue Conference. The People's Assembly stressed its full support for the political programme to find a solution for the crisis in Syria on the basis of Syria's sovereignty, derived from the will and conscience of the Syrian citizens. Mr. Omar Ossi, chairman of the Committee of National Reconciliation, asserted that this would be the only viable way out of the crisis and to achieve the ambitions of Syrian citizens in a more democratic stage, embracing the rights of all its citizens. The People's Assembly called upon all the national political forces in Syria and in the opposition to join the national dialogue and to make positive contributions to the formulation of Syria's future, away from any selfish and narrow trends, and rely on Syria's glorious history of our forefathers who fought against the Ottomans and Turkish imperialists. Everybody should work to get out of the crisis and to score victory against the enemies of the homeland, beloved Syria. Syria's future should be based on the rule of law and full equality among citizens, in addition to combating corruption and developing the government departments. Syria would remain a faithful defender of all the just Arab causes and major interests. The communiqué concluded by asserting that those who reject national dialogue would be responsible for the continuing bleeding of the country, damaging its structure, status and vanguard role. The Minister of Education, Dr. Hazwan Wez, toured some schools in Damascus to follow up the examination process. He asserted that the development of educational curricula continue ahead. The minister listened to both teachers and students about their opinions of the new curricula and whether they supplied their needs. In Sweden and in collaboration with citizens, a unit of the Syrian Arab Army stormed a hideout of terrorists in the area of the mountain, killing and wounding most of the terrorists there. Large amounts of weapons were confiscated, including mines, explosive devices, Turkish-made guns, an Israeli-made rocket launcher and a lot of ammunition, in addition to stolen government vehicles and a large quantity of drugs. The hysterics of terrorism has reached psychological hospitals as the criminal attack even the mentally retarded people. Ibn Khaldun Hospital in the countryside of Aleppo is an advanced establishment with full equipment and medical personnel. It was attacked by the savage terrorists who sabotaged everything and attacked the doctors and their patients under the threat of arms and explosion activities in the area. Syrians will never be intimidated by such crimes. They will uproot terrorism and protect their homeland. New scandals are exposing the evil intentions of the radical extremists creating terrorism in Syria and rejecting the democratic secular basis of its regime in order to establish what they claim to be the state of the Islamic Caliphate. Reuters news agency quoted a number of them rejecting every secular democratic thought. Meanwhile, several Western information media exposed the role of Erdogan's government in supporting such groups with training centers to smuggle them into Syria. In a condemning document, one terrorist showed before the American CNN a film showing a number of armed terrorists whom he said had come via Turkey from Libya, the US, Morocco, Tunisia and all the other Arab countries in order to support the terrorist gangs and to establish an Islamic emirate. In Egypt, unknown assailants attacked the protesters who camped in front of the presidential palace using burning bottles and live bullets, injuring 27 people, including a number of security men. The attack also resulted in the burning of a number of protesters' tents, tension and traffic congestion prevailed in the streets surrounding the presidential palace. A number of ambulances reached the vicinity of the palace to carry the injured as security forces intensified their presence to prevent clashes and tried to catch the unidentified attackers. Bahrainis went out into the streets near the capital El Manama protesting against sentences of prison issued against 13 opposition leaders. Demonstrators who crowded amidst heavy deployment of Bahraini security forces chanted slogans condemning the sentences issued, stressing to continue their movement for the release of the detainees in the prisons of Al Khalifa. In a statement issued at the conclusion of the demonstration, the opposition stressed that the verdicts issued against the Bahraini political symbols are void and have no legal value because they are the result of a project of revenge carried out by means of a politicized jurisdiction that is not characterized being fair or even impartial. In Tunisia, clashes erupted between protesters against the ruling Al Nahda party and policemen in the city of Ben Qardan, south of the country. Policemen used tear gas to disperse demonstrators who protested against the poor living conditions in the country. More violent confrontations were renewed in different parts of the country in response to the statement by Prime Minister Hamadi El-Jibali on the improvement of the living conditions and the freedom of opinion in the country, asserting that the reality is completely different. The National Kurdish Movement of Peaceful Change accused Erdogan's government of liquidating 3 active Kurdish women in France. They accused his government of becoming a gang of murder and terrorism. Hundreds of Kurdish citizens gathered in front of the place of this crime in Paris, shouting, "Turks are assassins and Holland is their partner."
The crime created large discontent and condemnation. The 3 women were shot dead during a large Kurdish demonstration. The demonstrators called upon the French authorities to expose the criminals. They described Erdogan as a murderer. They called for the release of Abdullah Öcalan, the Kurdish leader of the Labour Party. The Turkish government put its missions throughout Europe in a state of alert and asked the French government to consolidate security measures around Turkish interests. Erdogan's government claimed to be democratic. They also accused the French government of being accessory to the crime because of its abominable imperialist conduct in the region.
And now it's over to Vani with the economic news. God bless you all and long live Syria. For more information, you can visit our website on syriaonline.sy. God bless.
Good afternoon. The Minister of Electricity, Mr. Imad Khamis, toured a number of emergency centers in Damascus to review their readiness to follow up the most important problems and to listen to the opinions and complaints of citizens.
Due to the damage caused by large consumption and the current weather conditions, the minister toured various centers in Al-Mazeh and Al-Afif. He pointed out that electric power supplies were victims of the current crisis and needed citizens' cooperation. He also stressed the necessity of intensifying efforts in the workshops in order to carry out reforms and rehabilitations. He held a meeting with the directors concerned in this sector in order to discuss suggestions and to prepare the mechanisms that would push solutions forward as fast as possible.
The Minister of Agriculture asserted that this season's plan focuses on rehabilitating the burned forests. The manager of forests said that the total areas approached 232.8 thousand hectares. Most of them were burned. On the other hand, the director pointed out that the directorate implemented the plan of producing the seedlings that should be planted during this season, which include appropriate varieties to be suitable to the climate. The Minister of Industry stressed that the number of establishments of olive oil reached 1,098, while the number of the establishments for filtering and packaging olive oil reached 42. The ministry called for unifying efforts to market the product. On the other hand, the ministry suggested forming a commission for developing and promoting exports of olive oil. International credit rating agency Moody's has announced that it downgraded Cyprus's government bond rating by 3 notches, citing the anticipated increase in the government's debt burden. The agency said that it believes that there is a significantly increased likelihood that Cyprus may default outright or seek for its debt to be written down. Moody's also placed Cyprus's debt on negative outlook, citing liquidity concerns, the bank recapitalization needs, and a delay in negotiations with the Troika of the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund on a package of aid to resolve the country's liquidity crunch. The 2 biggest Russian gas-producing companies, Gazprom and Novatek, signed a deal to form a joint venture to produce liquefied natural gas from the Yamal Peninsula in Russia's Arctic. They intend to approve the main parameters of the project, including a timetable for making a final investment decision by the end of the year. The Gazprom chief executive Alexei Miller said that this venture would enable doubling the production of liquefied gas to reach 33 million tons a year, which would make Russia a prominent producer of this type of gas. And now over to the exchange rates according to the bulletin of the Central Bank of Syria. And with this we conclude our news. Thank you for watching and goodbye.